The Jets almost won. Another QB season is done. The Pack beat the Niners, and one of the big surprisers was that the Bucks looked like duds. Welcome to the Mish Bow. Alrighty, welcome to Week 10, everybody. We'll just kick it off with a good old-fashioned ka-chink, something like that. It's like kach. There we are. Yeah, so another good week in the books. More good for some of us than others, I guess you could say. Yeah. All right. Before we get into business, I'm going to take a quick sip of my beer. Hopefully you guys heard that ASMR. All right. So, a couple of things of business. If you're not aware, this week is the trade deadline. So, once I believe the Monday night game concludes, there will be no more trading. So, Derek, I guess this speaks to you mostly, but as well as everyone else in the league, get your final trades in now. I guess not now. It doesn't have to be now, but at least by the end of the week, I guess. So, second piece of business. At the end of this episode, I will be running through the, I believe, 8 Sacko punishments that we will be deciding between. Yep, there's 8. There will be a poll put out, and we will all vote on which one is the favorite amongst everybody. So that'll be something definitely interesting and to look out for. Obviously, if you're listening to this, then you know you can just skip to the end, or you can preferably, I guess, listen to the whole thing. But if you are just reading the newsletter, you won't be hearing this at all. So I guess that doesn't really affect you. All right, we will get into the transactions. First, Derek traded Miles Sanders and Marvin Jones to Bruce for Devontae Parker, J.D. McKissic, and Myles Gaskin. So first off, as I've said before, I believe that Miles Sanders is a very talented player when he plays, that is. And I believe that he will be the key factor in determining whether or not who the winner of this trade is. The other Myles Gaskin, is also injured right now, and it seems that he will be out longer. He was placed on the IR last week, I believe. That will keep him out for at least 2 more weeks, whereas Miles Sanders, it's seeming like he's going to play this week. So, should every player involved in this trade get healthy and play out the remaining of the season, I guess I personally, I don't know. I wrote here that I believe it'll favor Derek, because Devontae Parker, he could, revert to what he was at the end of last season in being a league winner. J.D. McKissic has not been terrible. And then Myles Gaskin's also been producing pretty well. But obviously, Gaskin will have to come back for that to happen. However, I believe that short term, this will definitely favor Bruce. And, it could at the end as well. It's fantasy. So it really all depends on, the health of these players and, what happens here. So next trade, we've got Derek traded Michael Gallup to Colin for James White. This one will be pretty quick in terms of analysis. Colin, following last week's matchups, he dropped Michael Gallup, and Derek still has James White. And so if you go off the logic that I've used in previous trades, Derek won this trade because of the dropping of Gallup. However, James White is not that exciting of a player. So yeah, I guess by technicalities, it favors Derek. Next, Sam traded Latavius Murray and DJ Chark to Lincoln for Tom Brady and Greg Ward. Well, Lincoln has Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. So he did not need Brady, except for this week. Patrick Mahomes is on a bye, so that's a bit stinky for Lincoln. On the other hand, DJ Chark is just coming off the best week of his season. And just this trade, I believe, went through before the games last week. I just wasn't able to comment on it because of it coming after Mish. Sam did need a quarterback, and so he definitely got one. And Lincoln, he wasn't really itching to get a receiver. Well, he didn't really need a receiver or a running back. But he does have Kamara, and Latavius Murray is, pretty solid handcuff. Based off last year when Latavius Murray came in, and I believe he put up like 30-something points in one matchup. Overall, I'd say that Sam probably won this trade purely based off of him getting a player in a position that he needed, and it's a pretty solid player to boot. So, yeah, I would say Sam won this trade, but it's fairly even, I guess. Then I traded Josh Jacobs and an 11th round pick for next year for Noah Fant, Le'Veon Bell, and a 7th round pick for next year. This is another perfect example of a trade that benefits both people involved. It benefits Fiala right now in the form of Josh Jacobs, and it benefits me now in the form of Noah Fant and a 7th round pick for next year, and I guess also Le'Veon Bell. Jacobs has not been producing as well as I had hoped this year, as he was on my team since the start, up until obviously this trade. And I cannot keep him for next year as he was a 1st round pick. So I sold him in exchange for a position that I needed, as well as a potential keeper, and those are both the same player, Noah Fant. And I got a nice draft swap in there, getting in 7th for an 11th. And then I guess I also got Le'Veon Bell. So yeah, I guess this trade I would say is pretty even. It could go either way. It really kind of depends on the players, how well they perform over the rest of the season, as well as, I guess, the player that I pick in place of that 7th round pick that I got from Fiala. So that'll do it for that trade. And then we move on to the final trade of this episode. We got Derek again. He traded Zach Ertz, Amari Cooper, and Kenyon Drake to Bruce. Hold up, did I get this wrong? Did Bruce trade? No, Bruce had Zach Ertz, Amari Cooper, and Kenyon Drake. No, so we're going to flip this. I'll fix it, don't worry. I have it wrong in the docket. Bruce traded Zach Ertz, Amari Cooper, and Kenyon Drake to Derek for Hunter Henry, J.D. McKissick. This is Derek and Bruce's 2nd trade of this episode. And I think I also got this count wrong. I originally said Derek had 4 trades. Derek only had 3 trades this week. Man, I'm just losing it over here. Derek, between the two, Bruce and Derek, it seems that Derek won, in my opinion. This one, I guess, is not so cut and dry. While Ertz and Cooper finished last year hot, Ertz, Cooper, and Drake finished last year hot. This year is a bit different story. Ertz has been, you could say, nothing less than disappointing, and now he's hurt. And is he, dare I say, washed? Maybe. I guess we'll see when/if he comes back this year. Drake has also been kind of disappointing based off of where you drafted him. I believe the 2nd round. And he's also been dealing with a few injuries, currently out with an injury. I believe he even practiced today, but not for sure guaranteed to play this week. But he could show, I guess, to be a good running back when he returns. And then there's Amari Cooper, who has been the best out of these guys. He's done it quietly, though. He ranks currently as wide receiver 11 on the year. And then there's J.D. McKissick and Hunter Henry, We're both pretty solid. Hunter, I'd say a bit more than Henry, or than JD. This week, Derek will only be able to maybe use Kenyon Drake should he play, because Ertz is on IR and Cooper is on a bye, whereas Bruce can use both of these players. And so for this week, definitely Bruce won. However, after the bye week, when Cooper is going to play, and I'd say definitely by then Drake will play. I guess it'll really depend on how well these players produce. It could definitely favor Derek, but I guess only time will tell. And, Ertz, he could come back too. So I guess, we'll see what happens when we get there. Time for a sip of beer. Alrighty. Time for the game recaps. First, we're going to start off with Macy and I. This one, you could say, came down to the Monday night game, where I had the Patriots defense, and she had Rex Burkhead. And, well, let's just say it did not go very well for me. The Patriots defense ended up scoring 3 points, and Rex Burkhead scored 15.7. Other point totals in this matchup, Macy's Matt Ryan scored 23.36. Stephon Diggs got 20.8. And Young Ho Koo got 12. So that's pretty solid there. My kicker also got 12 points. And then I got 15 points from Chase Claypool, 15.3 to be exact, and 14.1. Pretty solid, almost 30 points from my Steeler boys. But other than that, it's a bit stinky in terms of the other point totals. Final score of this matchup was Macy beat me 103.96 to 78.84. Next matchup, we've got Michael versus Sam. This one was a bit closer, being the difference of about 35 points, 34 points-ish. This one, it was more or less decided by Sunday night, I guess, but it was probably kind of decided before then. Had some decent point totals on Michael's side, 20.8 from Kirk Cousins, 24.5 from Jerry Jeudy, and, that's just about it there. And then you got some kind of stinky numbers from Sam's side, 0 from Corey Davis, 4.8 from Ronald Jones, getting a staggering 3 carries. That's crazy. I don't know if you guys saw the stat there, but that Bucs offense, the dud offense of the week, you could even argue the season. The entire game, they rushed the ball 4 times, which is an NFL record. Ronald Jones went 3 carries for 9 yards, 3 receptions for 9 yards. So Tom Brady as well, he did stinky, obviously, 5.36 points there. Winner of this one, Michael, 97.8 to Sam's 63.16, and I believe Sam had the least amount of points on the week. So that moves us to Caleb and Derek. This matchup was the biggest deficit of all the matchups we've covered so far. Pretty solid performances from especially Caleb's side. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger 25.04, and I believe he even left with... No, he didn't leave with an injury. He had COVID. But then there's Dalvin Cook, almost 40 points. Dalvin Cook, man, he's been going off. I believe he's averaging like 27 points a game. And then there's Christian Kirk, 23.3. I mean, dude gets 0 points from Justin Jackson, but your Saints defense put up 16. Derek's defense also put up 16, 12.5 from Amari Cooper, and 24.56 from Cam. But other than that, had some pretty stinky scores. Final score of this one, Caleb won 137.24 to 86.06. Next matchup, we've got T-Corn versus Adam. This is, I believe, the biggest deficit in terms of point differential on the week. Let's just start with Adam here. Russell had a 22.1, which is a bit down for him. He threw two interceptions, and he fumbled twice. So not too good for Russell. Then you got 15.8 from Jerick McKinnon, not too bad. But you got some pretty stinky numbers. Laviska Shenault, 0.9. Robert Tonyan, 1.5. And 2 points from the Chiefs defense. Which brings us to T-Corn. TJ Hawkinson, 14.9. Antonio Gibson, 11.5. Keenan Allen, 25.3. Terry McLaurin, 24.5. Christian McCaffrey, 37.1. And Justin Herbert, 22.44. Yeah, this one was just a slobber knocker of a matchup here. T-Corn nearly doubling up at him. It's winning 161.54 to 86.4. And T-Corn had the highest point total of the week. So that earns him a beer. Congratulations, T-Corn. Yeah, you did it. Next, we've got Fiala versus Brian. This one, it looks like this one was the closest matchup of the week. So you go from the biggest point differential to the closest matchup. We had some pretty solid numbers here. There's only really one big number from Fiala's side, but Kyler Murray, 36.92. I have him in another league, and he did very well for me over there. So I'm quite pleased with his performance. I would have been okay without that fumble, but still put up. Actually, no, I have Kyler in 2 leagues. He won me both of those leagues. So Kyler Murray, great quarterback. Speaking of great quarterbacks, we had Aaron Rodgers on the other side with a 28.9, a bit overshadowed by Kyler, but still a great performance from Rodgers. And then you got 21 points from Will Fuller. You got 13.2 from Darren Waller. And you got 11 points from Kai Fairbairn. So not bad at all from Brian's team there. And he ended up getting the victory, 103.4 to 94.02. Which brings us to our next matchup, I think the most anticipated matchup of last week. State Farm versus Bruce. This one was the highest, I think, point total, especially when you consider how much points each team scored. Both teams above 127. I guess you could say 126.99 since one team was at exactly 127. Pretty solid performances from both sides. We had Joshua Allen with 36 flat, 33.1 from Tyreek Hill, 13 from Marvin Jones, who's done nothing really all year. And then from the other side, you got 15 from Greg Zuerlein, 14 from the Bills defense, 21.3 from Juju Smith-Schuster, 33.3 from Devontae Adams, 17.3 from Brandon Cooks, 13.5 from Todd Gurley, 15.9 from James Robinson, pretty measly 18.6 from Lamar Jackson. This one, I think this team that won this matchup here scored the second most points on the week. Yeah, it appears he did. Which is State Farm. He won 156.1 to 127, handing Bruce his first loss of the season. Which brings us to our last matchup, and I would say the second most anticipated matchup of the week, Colin versus Lincoln. This one was not quite as close as, maybe it is, I don't know, math is hard, as the Bruce State Farm matchup. You did have some pretty solid performances in this one. 31.48 from Patty Mahomes, 15.9 from Kamara, a bit low for him, I think, on average, but not bad. 23.8 from DK. And then you got kickers this week doing well. 14 points from Sanders, Jason Sanders, that is, from Miami. I believe he had a passing touchdown last year. And then the Ravens defense had 15. On the other side, you did have some pretty decent numbers. Travis Kelce getting 25.9. A.J. Brown getting 20.1. That's about it. Deshaun Watson had 23.24. Final score of this matchup was Lincoln winning 140.78 to 102.14. So that'll do it for the matchup recaps. And a bit of a little interesting tidbit here. something I am a bit proud of, but it's also a little bit sad. I went 6-1 in terms of me predicting the winner for this week's matchups. The good part is that 6, which, I mean, that's my best record on the week, or on the season, predicting correctly 6 winners. However, the sad part here is that one incorrect pick was my matchup where I lost. So, it's whatever, but, it still, it feels pretty good to get 6 matchups correct out of 7, but when you're that one, it's a bit stinky, so. Alrighty. Now we're going to move on to the power rankings. Number 14, we have Michael. You did get a win, but now you're tied with me in terms of our record, and I have more points scored on the season, so that's what made the ultimate deciding factor that put you last. You did, as I said, beat Sam, but you have a quite difficult matchup coming up. So that is Michael at 14. Number 13, as I kind of just alluded to, I have myself. I did a stinky loss this past week to Macy. She did pretty good, but I just did terrible. So I would have lost to pretty much every team this week. And most teams ahead of me are better than me. Well, I guess I could say all teams ahead of me are better than me. So I'm going to definitely be playing a pretty decent opponent in this upcoming week. So I guess we'll see what happens. Number 12, we've got Derek. You lost to Caleb. You put up an alright number of points. I mean, better than me, so I can't really say too much, but was kind of a blowout. You do go up against a fairly tough opponent. So we'll see how you can do. Number 11, we've got Samuel. You lost a pretty, not really that close, but your team very much underperformed this week. As I mentioned earlier, you scored the least amount of points on the week. You go up against an opponent that, you could definitely win if you get some good production. As I mentioned earlier, I guess maybe I didn't mention earlier, Derrick Henry didn't really help you out too much. Scored 6.8 points, so you're kind of hoping more from him, as he is, I believe, the number 3 running back on the season. So we'll see if you can bounce back. Number 10, we've got Macy. As I've mentioned before, you beat me earlier this season, actually, like last week. That's what this show is all about, talking about it. And you go up against an opponent you very well could beat. But it's not a cakewalk. So Macy at number 10. Number 9, we've got Caleb. You put up a very good number of points last week. Above 100, almost 140 points for you, Caleb. Which is good. But you do have a tougher opponent this upcoming week. So we'll see if you can reproduce that level of production and see if you can get yourself another win. Number 8, we've got Adam. You lost to T-Corn, but, much like, I believe a decent amount of people in this league know, it's hard to go up against the team that scores the most points on the week, because then they'll beat everybody, which is what happened to you this week. But on top of that, you also didn't do too great. So hopefully, maybe not hopefully, you'll see if you can bounce back and go up against this opponent that you very well could beat this upcoming week. Number 7, Alex Fiala. Started off real hot, but now I believe you're 4-5? You did put up pretty decent amount of points. You would have lost to maybe about half the league, but there's definitely some teams out there you would have beat. But your team isn't bad looking. They just have not been performing their best. This upcoming week, you're going up against a pretty decent opponent, so we'll see if you can bounce back and get yourself a win. Number 6, we've got Brian. You beat Fiala last week, stopping your tumble of losses, I guess, losses. And you're going up against an opponent that scored a lot of points last week. So we'll see if you can score a lot of points next week, this week, and we'll see how well you can do. Number 5, we've got Big Daddy T-Corn. Beat Adam very handedly, would have beat anybody. Not the most points on the season, but obviously the most points on the week. You go up against an opponent next week, so we'll see if you can get another dub. Which moves us to number 4. We've got Colin. You lost to Lincoln. And, I mean, you did score an alright number of points for the week. But, you're always hoping for more, obviously. You are going up against a pretty solid opponent this upcoming week. Definitely a team you could beat. But it's going to be, like I said earlier, about a matchup that I don't remember which one I was talking about. It will not be a cakewalk. So that's Colin at number 4. Number 3, the person that beat Colin, Lincoln, scored 140-something points on the week. Definitely enough to beat most teams. Like you only wouldn't have beat 2 teams, and so that's not too shabby. This upcoming week, you are going against a team that you just happened to score less points than this past week. So definitely going to be a very exciting matchup to watch. So we'll see how it goes for you. Number 2, maybe a bit surprising that this person's here. We've got Bruce. You lost to State Farm. You could very well be at the top of the standings after this week, but State Farm's team just looked really good. You did add some key pieces. I guess we could see if they're key pieces. You added Miles Sanders, and I believe you took back J.D. McKissick from Derek. You also traded Zach Ertz, part of a trade, Zach Ertz, to get Hunter Henry, so you upgraded there as well. So you very well could be number 1 team after this week, but for this week, I have you at number 2. You're going up against a pretty solid opponent, so we'll see. We'll see how you can do this upcoming week, which moves us to number 1, State Farm. You've had quite the season so far. You started off in the middle of the pack in terms of my rankings, maybe not in your rankings, but slowly you've worked your way up, and now you're definitely one of the top teams in the league this season so far. The opponent that you're going up against this week is definitely one that you could beat. So I'm expecting a pretty decent showing from you next week. So yeah, that would be the power rankings for week 10. Alrighty, now we are moving on to this week's game previews. We're going to first start off with my matchup versus Adam. Key players for myself, I've got Jonathan Taylor, who had a bit of a bad week. He fumbled early, which obviously hurts your game, but then that fumble caused him to miss a majority, but not be in for a majority of the rest of the game. And the defense he's going up against is not necessarily an easy defense to face, so I'm hoping that he can get a rebound here. And then a second key player for myself is Robert Woods, who had a bye last week, but the week before did very well, scoring above 20 points, I believe. And he's going up against the Seattle Seahawks. And if you know anything about the football this year, the Seahawks love to give up points. Just ask the Bills last week. So, Robert Woods. And then, for Adam, key players, we've got Aaron Jones. Last week, he did not as well as you would have hoped, scoring 12.9 points in his return from injury against the San Francisco 49ers. But this upcoming week, he's going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, whose defense is worse. So he could very well have a very good game. Another key player, another player that did not do super great last week is Mike Evans, scoring 10.4 against the New Orleans Saints on Sunday night. We'll see how well he can do this upcoming week. He's going up against Carolina, who is, despite their 3-6 record, Carolina, not a bad team. So we'll see how things can go. And for this matchup, I'm going to pick Adam as my winner. First time all season, I'm not picking myself, but I figured it's time to start doing so because I hoping I'm not going to get Sacko, but that's definitely a very real possibility. Next matchup, we've got Bruce versus Michael. Key players. First up for Michael, we've got David Montgomery. David Montgomery has been doing well recently. Last week, not so much, getting 420 points. That is 4.2 for those of you keeping track at home. But that was up against a pretty tough Tennessee defense. He's going up against Minnesota, who enjoys giving points to the running back. David Montgomery is questionable with a concussion. So we'll see if he can play this week. Which moves us to Cooper Kupp as another key player for Michael. Did pretty well the week prior to the bye against Miami, getting 20 points. And just like actually the same exact reasoning I gave to Robert Woods for doing well applies to Cooper Kupp, as the wide receivers on the same team. And a team that is facing the Seattle Seahawks. So I'm expecting him to do pretty well against them, as I mentioned previously. Which moves us on to key players for Bruce, starting with Joshua Allen. He had the very nice delight of playing the Seahawks last week. And in that matchup, he scored a very nice 36 points. This week he's going up against Arizona, who also is a team that likes to give up points. Just ask Russell Wilson when they played them a couple weeks back. Great game, by the way. Then you've got newly acquired Miles Sanders, who on the season is running back 27, and that's even with missing 3 weeks. So I really, really like Miles Sanders, but I just had to trade him away. But I hope he does decent for you. He's going up against the Giants. They are not a good team offensively, and for you, which is a good thing defensively. So for this matchup, I am going to pick Bruce. Next matchup, we've got Caleb versus Brian. Key player, Caleb. We've got Dalvin Cook, who is just freaking tearing it up this season. Nearly 40 points last week, over 40 points the week before. But this week he's going up against Chicago, who does have a pretty solid run defense. We'll see how well he can perform this week as he faces a tougher matchup. And then we've got Christian Kirk, who's been emerging this season as a pretty solid wide receiver. He currently ranks as the wide receiver 24 on the season. And in the past 3 matchups, he's scored above 20 points. So we'll see if he can come back and score some more points. He's got Buffalo this week, who is a pretty good defense to face if you're a wide receiver in fantasy football. I guess in real life too, but we'll see if he can keep his high-scoring, field-stretching ways going. Which brings us to Brian. We've got Aaron Rodgers as a key player. He's been doing really well this season. He ranks as the QB number 5, and in fact, he's the number 5 overall player on the entire season in terms of all fantasy players. Much like Christian Kirk, he scored above 20 points the last 3 weeks, nearly hitting 30 in 2 of them. And he's going up against the defense of Jacksonville, who is not the best. So we'll see how well he can do. Another key player for Brian is Will Fuller, a almost teammate of Aaron Rodgers. Packers front office did not get a trade done, but hey, hopefully that means good things. Will Fuller does rank as the wide receiver number 7 on the year, and not quite like Aaron Rodgers and Christian Kirk. He's only had 2 20-plus performances in the last 3 outings for him. But, he's scored over 15 points in every matchup he's played in this season, except for week 2. But he's going up against Cleveland defense, who is a pretty plus matchup for wide receivers in this league. For this week, I am picking for this matchup, I am picking Brian as my winner. Next matchup, we've got T-Corn versus Derek. Key players for T-Corn, we've got Justin Herbert. Decent showing last week, 22.44 points. And this week, however, he's going up against a defense that is not the best in terms of quarterback play. Pretty held in check the team they played, a couple weeks ago or something. Maybe, I don't know. But, we'll see if Herbert can go out there and perform like he's been doing all year, ever since Tyrod got stabbed. Which brings us to another key player for you, TJ Hawkinson, who's quietly been the number 2 tight end on the season. Been very good overall. Going up against the Washington defense, who is not the best in terms of points to the tight end position. And so we'll see if he can keep things rolling for you. Which brings us to Derek's key players, newly acquired Jimmy White. Last week, not great. Week before, not great. Week before that, not great. So we'll see how well he can do up this week against a very tough Baltimore defense. I'm honestly not expecting very much from him this matchup. Which brings us to the second key player for Derek, his other starting running back, Mike Davis, who the last 3 weeks he scored 8.7, 8.7, and 8.6. So he's been a bit of a decline. However, this week he's going up against the Tampa Bay defense, who is a bit tough, but Christian McCaffrey is likely to be out, which is a bit ironic because he is playing up against the team that does have Christian McCaffrey. Derek has Mike Davis. Christian McCaffrey belongs to T-Corn. So it's pretty interesting turn of events there. For this matchup, I am picking T-Corn, and that is my lock pick for the week. Which moves us on to Fiala versus Fiala versus Colin. Key players for Fiala, we've got Kyler Murray. Last week, he put up a lot of points against Miami. And he's going up against Buffalo, who is arguably a worse defense. So, if 1 plus 1 is 2, then you've got another good matchup for Kyler Murray. Second key player for Fiala is a teammate of Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, who, despite Kyler going off last week, D-Hop only had 6 points, 3 receptions for 30 yards. So, not the best for D-Hop. But he does get to go up against the same defense that Kyler Murray is. So, if all things go according to plan, D-Hop should be in for a good game as well. Which brings us to Colin's key players. We've got James Conner. Last week only put up 4 points against Dallas, which, you usually expect good performances from players going up against terrible defenses, but not last week. However, this week they're going up against another easy defense in Cincinnati. So we'll see if James Conner can bounce back for you, Colin. Which brings us to your second key player in Jarvis Landry, just coming off the bye. Going up against a tough defense this week. However, the week before the bye, only put up 9.2 points. We'll see how well he can do. Now a couple weeks removed from the Odell Beckham Jr. injury. So, we'll see if he can produce well for you, Colin. And my winner for this matchup is Colin. Which brings us to one of the biggest anticipated matchups probably of the week, State Farm versus Lincoln. Key player for State Farm is James Robinson, who last week scored not the best, 15.9. However, he's going up against the Packers, who I mentioned last week has the worst run defense on the season. So expecting him to do at least halfway decent. Another key player for you, State Farm, is Juju Smith-Schuster, who last week did quite well for himself, scoring 21.3 points against the Dallas defense. And he's going up against Cincinnati, much like the guy I talked about earlier, James Conner. We'll see how well he can do against them. They're a bit tougher against the pass, as they are for quarterbacks. Also, there's some other mouths to feed over there in Pittsburgh with my guys, Deontay and Chase. But there's also Eric Ebron and obviously James Conner as well. So I guess you could say James Washington as well is over there. And there's that other guy too, Ray McLeod. So we'll see how well Juju can do. And then that brings us to key players for Lincoln. We've got Nick Foles in at quarterback with Patrick Mahomes on his bye. Last week did fairly decent against a tough Tennessee defense, and he's going up against an even easier defense to play against this week in Minnesota. So expecting him to do pretty well, which brings us to Alvin Kamara, the number 2 running back on the season. Number 1 if you count PPR, which this league is. So number 1, I guess, running back on the season, scoring 15.9 points. But he's going up against San Francisco's defense, who held Aaron Jones pretty much in check last week when they faced each other. So we'll see how well he can perform against them. And for this matchup, I've got my winner as State Farm, which moves us on to the last matchup of the week. Macy versus Sam. Macy, key player for you. Rex Burkhead was a crucial piece in getting you the win last week. Rex Burkhead, however, does have a quite tougher matchup this week as he goes up against Baltimore. And as I've mentioned before, tough defense there in Baltimore. So we'll see how well he can do. Which brings us to your second key player, Mark Andrews, who is facing the same team that Rex Burkhead's on, New England Patriots, and that'll be fun because that's a Sunday night game. It was a pretty fun matchup last season, so we'll see how well of a matchup it is this season. Mark Andrews has been a bit stinky the last 3 weeks he's played, scoring 4.1, 5.2, and another 5.2 points. And the Patriots is not much easier of a matchup. However, it seemed like the Jets could kind of just do whatever they wanted against them. Rashad Perryman scored nearly, 30 points or something. So we'll see if Mark Andrews can bounce back and get a solid performance from a tough defense that he's facing. Which brings us to Sam, key player, Derrick Henry, as I mentioned before. Not the best performance last week, only scoring 6.8 points, but on the season he's been phenomenal, scoring tons of points. Number 3 player, number 3 running back on the season. But he's going up against a very tough top 5 ranked defense in the Indianapolis Colts. So we'll see if he can bounce back. Which brings us to Sam's second key player, Allen Robinson. Last week did decently, scored 15.1. Definitely not his best performance on the season, but definitely not his worst. And he's going up against the Minnesota defense this week, which is a defense that teams can definitely score points on, especially through the air. So we'll see if Allen Robinson can not necessarily bounce back, I guess, but have a week-winning performance for you, Sam. And for my pick of this matchup, I am picking Sam as my upset pick of the week. And that will do it for the matchup previews for this week. Alrighty, that moves us on to this last segment, which is we will be going through the 8 options that we have listed for the Sacko Punishment for this season. I know I probably should have done this sooner in the season, probably even before the season even started. However, I don't make the rules, so we're doing it now. So like I said, I've got 8 options. What will happen is I will create a poll, and everyone will vote in the poll, and we will determine what our Sacko Punishment is for this season. So, and this is in no particular order, just the order that they came up with. It just happened to be in a bar over the weekend. So, it's a bit kind of all over the place in terms of what they are. So, number one idea, paintball run. For those of you that don't know what this is, pretty much we'll just go to a paintball course. In this case, it'll most likely be Commando Sports, Commando Paintball or something like that. Probably Commando Paintball, considering they're a paintball place. There's this area that they've got that's just kind of like a field with some obstacles. Basically, we'll just have the Sacko stand at one end of the field, and they'll run to the other end and back, and the entire time, all other members of the league that are able and wanting to participate will be there and shooting paintballs at the guy or girl running. So that is paintball run. That brings us to the second option, another running event, you could say, the beer mile. For those of you that don't know what this is, you will be running a mile. However, every quarter mile, including at the beginning, you will drink an entire beer. So you will start the race by drinking an entire can of beer, run a quarter mile, drink another can of beer, run a quarter mile, drink another can of beer, run another quarter mile, and then finish off by drinking another can of beer and running the last quarter mile, giving you 4 beers and a mile. I've seen videos of people doing this, and there's definitely been more than one occasion of vomiting. So maybe not the most enjoyable, but, you get a good amount of exercise. Next option, stand-up routine / karaoke, where you sing 3 songs, and the league will get to choose the 3 songs. This one's pretty self-explanatory. The stand-up routine, obviously, you'll just go up on the stage and do a stand-up routine, 5 or so minutes, maybe less, maybe more, depending on, depending on factors. And then, / karaoke, where you have to perform 3 karaoke songs, and the league will get the pleasure of picking the 3 songs that you have to perform. So that one could be a fun one. Probably a bit more fun and less painful, at least physically, than the previous 2 options. So yeah. Which brings us to the number 4 option, which is another type of performance. We've got street performance. Basically, what we were thinking of for this is you would have to stand on the street somewhere, like a street corner, and perform something. It could be juggling, it could be singing, it could be dancing, it could be solving a Rubik's Cube and giving a detailed explanation on how to solve the said Rubik's Cube. Basically, whatever you want. And we don't have an exact, amount picked out, but you have to do that until you receive like 8 tips or 10 tips or like $10 worth of tips or, whatever. So obviously if that one's picked, we'll have to figure out the finer details of it. But street performance as number 4. The number 5 option, pretty simple explanation here. Take the SAT. You would just, sign up for the SAT and take it. I guess I failed to realize that there could be a monetary requirement for this activity. So if that is the case, obviously we're not going to make someone pay however much it is to do the SAT. So if that one ends up winning and that is not something that is realistically accomplishable, we will move on to the second choice. Or I'm guessing people just won't vote for it. So that is the 5th option, taking the SAT. The number 6 option is a creation of a body issue calendar. So I'm sure some, if not most, if not all of you have at least seen or heard of the body issue calendar, or body issue edition of ESPN or Sports Illustrated or whatever magazine, which is they take photos of athletes where they are naked and they show off their bodies, but obviously they keep the private areas concealed, whether with arms or sport balls or what have you. For this one, the idea is the Sacko will create a collage of 12 photos. It could be more if you're going with the 14-month calendar. And taking those photos and turning them into a calendar, and every league mate, and I guess you could include friends and family in that as well, could get a calendar of a body issue for that person. Definitely some details to be worked out about that, I guess you could say. There was a suggestion that for that punishment, you could sell the magazine or the calendar and donate the proceeds to charity. I guess that's definitely an option with this one, but that is the number 6th option. Number 7th option, music video. This one's kind of self-explanatory. Not really, I guess. I'll explain it. But this one I would say is probably the most creative out of all of them. You have to recreate a music video. Could be a current song, a song that came out in the 80s. The song does have to be over 3 minutes long, something that was agreed upon in the creation of this list. And then, just recreate it. So, if you want to do Gangnam Style, you've got to do all the dances and get all the sexy ladies. Oh, Oppa Gangnam Style. So that's the 7th option on this here list now. Which brings us to the 8th and final option. I guess kind of a strange number to end. Didn't go to 10, kept going up to 5. It's whatever. Number 8. Something that may be a bit difficult right now, probably more realistic in the future, I guess, but blow-up doll date, which basically means whoever loses, they will take a blow-up doll. They will bring said blow-up doll to a restaurant of their choice, and they will have dinner with the blow-up doll as if they were a real person, ordering them food and drink and conversating with them, as if nothing was amiss. So, for that, obviously, just them going by themselves could be a punishment, but it would probably be something where we'd either want video of it or most likely just have the rest of the league at another table watching them from a distance. So, that is the 8 options that we came up with in a bar on a Sunday afternoon while watching football for this season's Sacko Punishments. And as I mentioned before, apologize for how late this is coming out, as there's definitely some teams that are more likely to win Sacko than others. Cough, cough, myself. And I'm fully aware of that, and I'm going to vote on which one I think will be the most fun. And I hope so. I hope that even those of you that are definitely in the running for Sacko will have the same mindset and not think, which one of these will I not want to do? Because I'm afraid I'm going to be Sacko and have to do something not great. But to be honest here, I don't think that any one of these options, some of them are more preferred, I guess, than others, but I don't think there's one that's terrible. Obviously, I don't want to necessarily, there's some of these, like I said, kind of wanted. I wouldn't mind doing the music video. The body calendar issue would be fun. Beer mile was something. That'd be kind of. It's probably worse than I think it is. But I guess that wouldn't be the worst thing to do. Stand-up routine karaoke. I've done karaoke before. Just get a couple beers in me, and shouldn't be an issue. I've taken the SAT, so. And I've also been shot by paintballs. Street performance, I've kind of done that, maybe. But it was with a band and, whatnot. But never had a blow-up doll. That's, I guess, out of all of these options here, that's the one area that I'm not experienced in. But I can imagine that would be quite funny. So, that is it for this week's episode. Be sure to go and vote in the poll that I will be sharing along with this week's episode. It'll be, if you're listening to this from the podcast feed, which I think some of you actually are, which is pretty cool. It'll be on the Facebook post, and I'm sure most of you will be getting this from that, if at all. And I'll post something in the Facebook group chat as well, just so that everyone's seeing it. I know there's some people that aren't watching these as frequently as, weekly or even at all. But you know what? People are busy. I get it. But yeah, this is something I guess I kind of would like at least a majority of the league to vote on. At least so that we have one that's a clear-cut winner. But obviously, I prefer every person in the league to vote on which one they think would be the best Sacko Punishment. So, yeah. So that's it, I guess. So, with that, thank you, and thank you.